In 1977, during what would become one of Elvis's final concerts, a heartbroken 4-year-old girl stood crying in the front row after losing her mother, and when the king of rock and roll saw her, he did something that stopped the entire show and left 18,000 people sobbing. Security tried to remove the disruption, but Elvis had other plans that would create one of the most beautiful moments in music history. But what did Elvis whisper to that little girl that transformed not just her life, but the hearts of everyone who witnessed it? Evening. The year is 1977, and the air inside the Memphis Coliseum hangs thick with anticipation and cigarette smoke. 18,000 fans pack every seat, every aisle, their voices creating a thunderous roar that vibrates through the concrete walls like a living thing trying to break free. The stage lights cut through the haze like searchlights piercing fog, casting long shadows across the sea of upturned faces that stretch back into darkness. Women clutch handkerchiefs already damp with perspiration. Men loosen their ties in the stifling heat, and children perch on shoulders, like small kings surveying their domain, all waiting for the same man who has defined their Saturday nights and Sunday morning guilt for over 2 decades. The opening chords of C.C. Rider explode through the sound system with the force of thunder, and there he is, Elvis Aaron Presley, stepping into the spotlight, wearing his iconic white jumpsuit, adorned with golden eagles that seem to take flight in the swirling stage lights. The sequins catch the illumination like fallen stars scattered across his broad frame, and for a moment, he is every inch the king the world expects him to be. His voice, still powerful despite everything the tabloids whisper, fills the arena like a force of nature, as thousands of flashbulbs pop like lightning strikes in the manufactured darkness. The crowd surges forward against the security barriers, a tide of reaching hands and desperate faces. Teenage girls scream until their voices crack. Middle-aged housewives clutch their hearts as if Elvis's presence might stop them beating. And grown men find themselves transported back to their youth, when rock and roll was still dangerous and new. The energy in the arena is electric, crackling with the kind of raw emotion that can turn ordinary people into temporary believers in magic. But tonight feels different. There's something in the air beyond the usual electricity of an Elvis concert, a heaviness, like the moment before a storm breaks, when the very atmosphere seems to press down with invisible weight. The audience senses it too, though they can't name it, can't pinpoint what makes this evening feel charged with possibility and dread in equal measure. They scream louder, wave their arms more frantically, as if their devotion alone could chase away whatever shadow has fallen across their idol. Near the front of the stage, pressed against the barrier by the surging crowd, stands a small figure that doesn't belong in this adult world of passion and pandemonium. A little girl, no more than 4 years old, with blonde curls that catch the stage lights, and a yellow dress that once looked Sunday best, but now appears wrinkled and tear-stained from the crushing crowd. While everyone around her reaches toward Elvis with desperate hands, their fingers grasping at air as if they could somehow touch divinity itself, she stands perfectly still, her small fists pressed to her eyes, her mouth open in a cry that no one can hear above the deafening roar of worship and want. Behind the dazzling smile and commanding presence that has made him the most recognizable man on earth, Elvis Presley is drowning in the very success that was supposed to save him. The pills that were supposed to help him sleep now keep him awake for days, staring at hotel ceiling fans that spin like the carousel of his thoughts. The ones meant to wake him up now drag him deeper into a fog so thick he sometimes forgets what city he's performing in, until someone whispers it in his ear moments before he takes the stage. His body, once lean and dangerous enough to scandalize a nation, has become soft and unreliable, betraying him night after night as he forces it through the motions of being the king, when all he wants is to remember what it felt like to be Elvis. The weight of 18,000 expectations presses down on his shoulders, heavier than any cape, heavier than the crown he never asked for but can never remove. These people have paid their hard-earned money, driven hundreds of miles through the night, some of them, to see Elvis Presley transform their ordinary Tuesday evening into something magical and transcendent. They want the hip swivel that once made Ed Sullivan film him only from the waist up, the trademark sneer that launched a million teenage rebellions, the man who once scandalized America and made their daughters scream for reasons their mothers pretended not to understand. They want the myth, not the man who can barely recognize himself in hotel mirrors anymore, who sees a stranger wearing his face like an ill-fitting mask. Colonel Parker lurks somewhere in the shadows beyond the stage lights, counting ticket sales and calculating percentages with the cold precision of an accountant, treating Elvis's God-given gift like a commodity to be packaged, marketed, and sold until there's nothing left but empty calories and artificial sweeteners. The business machine never stops grinding, never pauses for the luxury of genuine emotion or spontaneous human connection. Every gesture must serve the brand. Every word must maintain the carefully constructed mystique that keeps the money flowing like water through Parker's fingers. Even here, even now, surrounded by the love of thousands, Elvis feels the invisible chains that bind him to a persona he created so long ago he can barely remember who he was before the world decided he belonged to them. His marriage to Priscilla has crumbled like ancient paper, leaving him with supervised visits to see Lisa Marie, his precious daughter who calls him Daddy when the lawyers aren't listening, and looks at him with eyes that hold all the love he's forgotten how to accept. The loneliness echoes through the empty rooms of Graceland, through the hollow laughter of hangers-on who disappear when the party ends and the lights come up, through the crushing silence between songs when the crowd noise fades and he's left alone with thoughts that chase him like demons. The pills make everything feel distant, like watching his own life through frosted glass, like being a ghost, haunting his own existence. The music that once flowed through him like electricity, like the very blood in his veins, now feels mechanical and rehearsed, as empty as the hotel rooms he wakes up in. He goes through the motions because that's what everyone expects, because stopping would mean admitting that the king is just a tired man in a rhinestone suit who wants nothing more than to feel something real again. The opening notes of Love Me Tender float across the arena like a lullaby, and Elvis's voice wraps around the melody with the practiced ease of a man who has sung these words 10,000 times. But as his eyes drift across the sea of adoring faces, they keep returning to that small figure in yellow, motionless among the swaying bodies. Her sobs are lost in the ocean of sound, but her pain radiates outward like ripples on still water. Something shifts inside Elvis's chest, a crack in the armor he's worn for so long he'd forgotten it was there. The words of the song, tender words about love and devotion, suddenly feel hollow in his mouth. How can he sing about love when there's a child crying just feet away from him, ignored by everyone, including himself? The disconnect between his performance and her reality becomes unbearable. Without warning, Elvis stops singing. His voice simply cuts off mid-verse, leaving the band scrambling to follow his lead. The musicians exchange confused glances. This isn't part of the show, isn't in any script or setlist. The backing singer's harmony trails off into uncertain silence. For a moment that stretches like eternity, 18,000 people hold their collective breath, wondering if their king has forgotten the words to his own song. Elvis steps away from the microphone, his cape flowing behind him as he walks to the edge of the stage. The crowd's murmur builds like distant thunder, speculation rippling through the rows. Security guards tense, their hands moving instinctively toward their radios. In the wings, Colonel Parker's cigar dangles forgotten from his lips as he watches his meal ticket deviate from the carefully orchestrated performance. But Elvis sees none of this. His entire world has narrowed to the small girl whose tears have become his true audience. He kneels at the edge of the stage, his sequin knees touching the cold metal platform, and extends his hand toward her. The gesture is so unexpected, so far removed from the choreographed spectacle everyone expected that a gasp rises from the crowd, like a collective intake of breath. The little girl looks up through her tears, her eyes wide with confusion and hope. Around her, adults freeze mid-scream, their hands still reaching toward Elvis, but their attention now focused on this unprecedented moment. Cameras flash like strobe lights, but for once, Elvis doesn't perform for them. His face, usually a mask of studied charisma, shows nothing but genuine concern. Security guards start moving toward the disturbance, their training telling them to restore order, to get the show back on track. But Elvis raises his free hand, not the theatrical gesture of an entertainer, but the quiet authority of a man who has made a decision that supersedes all protocols. The guards stop, uncertain, caught between their duties and the unmistakable command in their employer's eyes. The arena falls into a hush so complete that individual voices can be heard, whispered questions, stifled sobs, the creak of seats as people lean forward to witness something they instinctively know is historic. In that silence, Elvis's voice carries clearly across the vast space, speaking not into the microphone, but directly to the child whose pain has pierced through every barrier he's built around his heart. Elvis's voice, stripped of all performance and artifice, carries across the hushed arena with startling clarity. "Come here, sweetheart," he says softly, his words somehow reaching every corner of the massive space. "It's going to be okay." The little girl hesitates for only a moment before stepping forward, her small hand finding his large ringed fingers. With surprising gentleness for a man who has grown accustomed to commanding stages, Elvis helps her climb onto the platform. 18,000 people watch in absolute silence as their king kneels beside a crying child, his white cape pooling around them both like protective wings. Elvis pulls out his own handkerchief, not a stage prop, but the simple cotton square he keeps for his own nervous perspiration, and gently dabs at her tears. The gesture is so tender, so utterly human, that women in the audience begin weeping openly, their own hearts breaking for reasons they can't fully name. "What's your name, honey?" Elvis asks, his famous voice now barely above a whisper. The child's response is lost to history, spoken too quietly for the microphones to catch, but Elvis nods, as if she shared the most important secret in the world. He stands slowly, lifting her with him, and walks back to the microphone stand. The little girl clings to his neck, her yellow dress bright against his white jumpsuit, and for the first time in months, Elvis feels the weight of genuine purpose instead of mere obligation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elvis says into the microphone, his voice thick with emotion. He's not trying to hide. "This little angel just lost her mama." A collective gasp rises from the crowd, followed by a silence so profound that the arena seems to hold its breath. "Sometimes," Elvis continues, looking out at the sea of faces while holding the child close, "sometimes we all need someone to hold us when we're scared and alone." Without another word, he begins to sing again, not "Love Me Tender," but he's got the whole world in his hands, his voice carrying a conviction and vulnerability that no studio recording has ever captured. The little girl rests her head against his shoulder as his voice fills the space, and something magical happens in that vast arena. The performance becomes prayer. The entertainment becomes communion. And 18,000 strangers become a congregation witnessing grace made manifest. As the song ends, Elvis carries the child to the edge of the stage, where security guards wait not to remove a disruption, but to reunite her with relatives who have been frantically searching. He kneels once more, eye to eye with her, and whispers something that makes her smile through her tears. Then he removes one of his rings, not a valuable piece, but a simple silver band, and slides it onto her tiny finger, where it hangs loose as a bracelet. The crowd erupts not in the usual screams of adulation, but in something deeper, a thunderous applause, mixed with tears and recognition that they have witnessed something unprecedented. For 10 minutes that feel like a lifetime, Elvis Presley has stepped out from behind the myth and reminded everyone present what it means to be human. In showing compassion to one lost child, he has found himself again, if only for this moment. And in doing so, has given his audience a gift far greater than entertainment. He has given them hope.